Arsenal actually do in the January transfer window? It's a really great question. It's a question we're going to ask today here on the Laurence McKenna channel. Welcome back. Today I've got another one of those great presentations that I know you guys love so much. Bring it up. Exactly. 3 signings were made in January, and there are a couple of outgoings as well. But let's just look at what they add to this Arsenal team and where this Arsenal team is going with them. If you've got any opinions on whether you think the people who arrived are good, whether the people who didn't arrive are bad, or vice versa, let me know in the comments below who you think they will sign in the summer and what kind of roadmap this indicates overall for Arsenal going forward. They signed 3 people. Trossard, great. Kiwior, I think it's Kiwior? Jakub Kiwior? Kiwior? And Jorginho from Chelsea. We will look at the people that they could have signed at one point, but let's just look at what Arsenal actually have on the books before we even start, right? And of course, they got the guys for 25 million, 24 million, and 11.3 million euros this is. So we're probably looking a little bit lower than that in terms of your actual pounds. But let's go down the exciting guy first, right? Brighton and Hove Albion's very own winger come sort of creative guy, Leandro Trossard, stepped in when Mudryk was signed to another side. Talk about Mudryk more later. But obviously, when you have a Mudryk-type character who is so linked with the team, who it seems to be already sold on the idea of Arteta, is putting things on his Instagram story, is saying incredible stuff like, hey, he's the second best coach in the world, and really making some pretty cute kissy faces to Arsenal, then, well, why would you not expect to sign this guy? I think the assumption was always that they would be at least coaxed into an agreement, but as soon as they got into that, and I've got a drink, by the way, as soon as they got into that battle between, where's the fee hit? They just completely got out of it. Arsenal will not get into any of that. It's a really strong hand to hold at a negotiation table. And it's also the kind of thing we think, okay, well, there are other options in the market. And Trossard is a really smart move there. Trossard did try and force his way out. Don't mind that so much. But at the same time, only a couple of months left on your contract. Do you really need to go down that route? Probably not. But here we are. And ultimately, I've spoken to a few Arsenal fans about this. I know he's not Santi Cazorla, but there's a few people who have basically gone down the route of, hey, this guy's got great feet, he gets out of tight space in a really nice way, he can definitely be used in kind of a more progressive way, especially considering they've got Xhaka, Jorginho, Partey, Lokonga's now gone out on loan. But he can get himself out of some tight spaces, stretch the pitch nice and wide, use the space in the way that you would want to. And when you find Saka and Martinelli are extremely direct, Trossard definitely is direct in his own way, but he can also go just a little bit more, getting that chalk on his heels kind of position. And honestly, I appreciate that. I also think defensively what he adds to the side, not that the other people are particularly negative or particularly weak, but defensively what he adds is he has played in that kind of Graham Potter wingback position, which, I know it wasn't permanently there, but you get what I'm saying. He's like that kind of defensive, boxy, that he creates so many different shapes for Arsenal that you just love to see for them. So I'm excited for that. And already he's played a couple of games. If I zoom in here, you literally see him played in the FA Cup 4th round. Obviously, that was the 1-0 to Man City in the end. And then obviously, the Manchester United game played very minimal minutes. But in one of those, he played the pass before the pass to Zinchenko. And in the other, 66 minutes is great, but you're playing against Man City and there's always going to be fine margins in those games, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. My real question is it value? Is what he's bringing to the side valuable? And I personally think yes. I personally think depth in those kind of positions is fantastic, especially for your strikers who are sprinting a lot during the season, but also bringing in some variation into the side as to what the end product is going to be. Changing in movement once you've got into a rhythm during the game, especially with our next signing that we will go to in a second, is really key with someone like a Leandro Trossard like this. He can come onto the field and the movement, the positions he took up against Liverpool, the positions he took up against other teams just for Graham Potter's Brighton, so he's already great at doing those positions, but he is Belgium, but let's not get into that. The positions that he takes up on the field are really going to empower Arsenal to have a second unit, and Arteta will want that second unit type character out there. Someone who can come on, change the shape, not just play the same kind of shapes and movements as the previous player. And, with the 5 subs in the Premier League, everyone wants to be maximising those. If you're a top 4, top 6, top 8 team, you should be maximising your defensive and substitute units. It's just smart. you kind of wonder whether Sam Allar was interested in that. Secondly, let's go on to the Spezia signing. They signed him from Spezia, actually weirdly the most expensive signing of the transfer window, and yet he is a third choice centre-back for them. Realistically, I mean, Ben White's been converted to a right-back, so I do think it makes sense. But they also need someone in there because if either of those guys were to get injured, then it would be an issue. I liked his transfer site. I just got this picture here. This one I think is great. I just like that. Do you know what I mean? And then these are just classic. Anyone who superimposes anything like that onto a Champions League background when your team are not in the Champions League, big fan. Big fan. That's not even a dig at Arsenal. I'm just a big fan. There were real questions over whether he will play enough or whether he has played enough. When I was looking through his stats, and I get like anyone can go on Transfermarkt, but he started 89% of the games, 85% of the minutes. So it's not like this guy struggles for either of the kind of stats that you would want him to fulfill. Like this guy is a ready to start, like pretty much out the box starter for this Arsenal team. And so it gives you someone who's a great backup. Now, granted, he won't be playing as much. He probably will need to learn the system and probably needs a little bit of time to fit into that Arsenal high back line. But it's quite clear that Arteta and the scouts at Arsenal see something handy in him. So I think he made a great backup to the two guys you've got back there at the moment. And realistically, in a title race, you don't lose one of your two centre-backs. Which brings me very comfortably onto the signing from Chelsea for the cheapest amount of 11 to 12 million, depending on how many titles or qualifications for Champions League happen. Chelsea were willing to let Jorginho go. Quite a maligned character at Chelsea, a character who I think a lot of people maybe were on the verge of disrespecting at one point. And I felt quite bad for him because, I mean, living in London is a great lifestyle. He is I think he's a really classy player. But there are a lot of compilations made of him where he's had a game where someone was a little bit too quick for him. They've gone past him. This happens a lot to a lot of midfielders. Some people saying he's lost a yard. Some people saying he's a little bit too old. The short-term contract, this is something that works really well. And he's incredible value while Arsenal are waiting for other people in the medium to long term, right? And what was weird about it was I was chatting with an Arsenal friend. And we watch a lot of the Premier League. Like I watch a lot of Chelsea games, I watch a lot of Liverpool, I watch a lot of Man City, obviously, and a lot of Arsenal. I sort of said, there aren't too many games where I feel like it's particularly memorable what Jorginho did. I almost had this image in my mind that I was like, this guy does he really play that much? And I get it, like the last few games, the last few games for Chelsea, like it was, I think the last time he started was the 21st down here. So, happened. Not even, what's the 2nd of February now? It's not like he's not been that prominent for them. But he played a lot of 90s this season. And I guess it kind of crept up on me a little bit. I think maybe it's because he gets, at the moment, Chelsea have a midfield where people can get lost a little bit. And you do have to kind of put that on the players to a huge extent. But I think it was also down to the system that Graham Potter was asking these guys to play. I think it was also down to the fact that Graham Potter's a quality manager, but he's probably got his own ideas of what he wants to bring in, who he wants to bring in. And that's where I started to say, well, what is it that he's actually bringing to this side? I always, whenever you look at a Premier League midfielder, you fit them into different molds, right? And the three top molds, at least of the previous era, in terms of attacking midfielders at least, would be Gerrard Lampard's goals. You can add like Makaleli into there. You could add even a Roy Keane or someone like that. It destroys, but Gerrard Lampard's goals. And people always try and find like does he do the Hollywood passes? Does he get into the box? Is he a bit... He's definitely much more... I think I'd describe him as more of a metronome, but I didn't know how well he compared to Thomas Partey. And then Sky Sports came out with this here. Now, not often do I reference Sky Sports, but let's go with it for a second. He compares favourably in almost all of these columns. Now, these could be cherry-picked stats, which I'm definitely sure they are. And I think on a broader, say one of those spider maps, which I don't have, you could definitely put him in a position of, okay, well, there's a weakness here. There are a lot of times where people go past him. There are a lot of times where there was that compilation of when he played for Italy, and I think it was North Macedonia? Beat them 1-0? I want to say North Montenegro, but I do think it's North Macedonia. Big fan of that part of the world. But look, forward passing percentage, similar to Partey. Passes completed, actually lower than Partey. Ball recovery is higher than Partey. Inception, I don't even need to tell you all this stuff, but I guess I can explain some of this. Jorginho has been in a team where they control the ball a lot less, and so he's going to have less passes because they've had a lot less control of the game. They've been in a disparate situation. He's coming into a side who are going to have a lot more control of the ball, but also a side who are adaptable on and off the ball, whether it is that they want to counter attack. So these are going to be much more, even if they are defending a bit deeper, Arsenal are always on the front foot because of, and I get like people say if you're defending on the back foot, Arsenal are a front foot team, if that makes sense. Even when they're defending, there is a front foot mentality to it, and you can see how quickly they want to break out. You can see the effective times this season where they've broken on the opposition. And that's where I did find the solutions interesting to this, right? Because I thought there was a ready-made solution, and a solution that I think it is, this is Arsenal blog, Arsblog, have called Zinchenko the queen in Arteta's plans. And what I mean by that is the guy who can move anywhere, the guy who is he's got so much latitude to move in so many different places. And I would have thought he would slot in here quite nicely, right? Let me just zoom in a little. I think that's as far as I can go. I thought he would slot in here quite nicely as a replacement. And it's not like Tierney, who can slot in at left back, is that much weaker, right? Sorry, these are hand-drawn circles because I didn't know how to do circles. Anyway, I thought he would slot in quite nicely here. But you can see why they've got him, right? Because actually, if you slot him over here to more of this Partey role, which is, I know that formations aren't arbitrary like this, but if you slot him over here to more of this Partey role, and you do, say, put Partey on the other side, or if you want to put Zinchenko in there, or you want to do Zinchenko and Jorginho, don't know if that works, then you still have the option of having a Tierney there. You still have an option of actually completely changing your midfield as a two. And then you've got basically two midfielders that go about two that can come in, different combinations and units. Again, Arteta is, as Pep Guardiola also has been, there are different ways of playing. Why do you think why do you think Man City went in the summer for a Haaland, but also an Alvarez? Two different ways of playing, two different ways of getting the ball to the striker. That's what is the interesting aspect here. If I highlight, say, an Nketiah up top, I was discussing, would Gabriel Jesus come straight back into this team? Well, football doesn't work like that anymore, and nor does the midfield for Arsenal. It doesn't matter if you come straight back into the team. Gabriel Jesus has always got the quality. Nketiah is in form right now. That's fantastic. But the whole point of what I'm trying to say is there is an adaptability that they are trying to achieve, which has nothing to do with the requisite quality of each player. And it breeds something within an Arsenal side, or any side that's got it. Liverpool had it because they never really started their strongest 11, apart from, I think, like a Champions League final. But what I'm saying is, it gives them an adaptability in that midfield that just is so different to if you can only really play those two players and really feel like you're weakening it. Now, and when you look at the players that went out on loan, am I lost on my own timeline? No, I'm not. We'll zoom out just a little for you though. The key outs this summer, three key outs this January. Marquinhos, loan to Norwich. They've just signed a Trossard. Marquinhos isn't going to get minutes. Lokonga, under scrutiny a little bit actually at Arsenal at the moment, and probably worth noting, I think Arsenal fans have very high standards, and sometimes those can be expressed in quite extreme ways. I'm not saying you're a bad fan base or anything. I'm just saying there is a strong feeling sometimes around Arsenal to certain players, and I think there's high expectations of Lokonga. Crystal Palace, great club to go to. You've got your Patrick Vieiras, you've got some fascinating characters in the side, and you've got an experienced team mixed with the youthful exuberance. Great place to loan him out to. Keeps him in London, keeps him close to Arsenal, and is a really smart loan, frankly. And then Suarez finally, honestly, if he's being loaned to Fulham, then clearly there's some quality there. And it's nothing to do with is he good or not enough for the Premier League, but he probably just wants minutes. He probably wants to play a little bit more than he is currently playing, and Arsenal can't offer him that right now. So I'm happy with that as a loan out. So here's where I think it's kind of worth noting a couple of things, right? There were two big transfers which kind of hung over the club in January, and in a way kind of took away from some of the excitement around some of the other signings. I don't really think it's fair. Mudryk is an incredibly talented player. His fee, 70 million, high fee, right? And I get it, he came in, he had a really good debut for Chelsea. He didn't score, but he looked really bright against Liverpool and looked really intent on impressing. So there could be a chance they've missed out on someone there, right? But if your team's doing well, have you always missed out? You can't have every good player in the game, so the logic can't always be we just buy everyone and whoever we want. I guess the only frustrating thing from an Arsenal perspective, which people might think Mars the window, but it doesn't. It clearly doesn't. Is that Arsenal did miss out or haven't paid the money that they maybe should have paid for a potential Ballon d'Or player. The real question is, does Arteta actually want a Ballon d'Or player in his team? And then the other player that they were apparently looking at was Moises Caicedo. Also, very high fee. There's 80 million right here. Like that's a lot of cash. Do you know what I mean? Like that's a serious long-term investment. Which, let's be honest, if Brighton are that serious about wanting to keep him or wanting to sell him, then don't challenge that. Like if a player wants to leave, which he probably does, and he is open to it, great. Would he have added something to midfield? Absolutely. Would it possibly also disrupt what is going on at Arsenal right now? Because he's an instant starter coming into the team, and at the moment there's a formation which maybe they don't want to disrupt. That too. So I'd just be interested to know what you guys think about missing out on these guys as well. It looks like there's 4, but there's actually only 2. I think missing out on Mudryk is a bigger miss this season than Caicedo. But missing out on Caicedo or another midfielder in that ilk in the summer would be a bigger miss than missing out on a Mudryk. Let me know. What do you think? January is a weird time. You don't evaluate some of the same way as you do January. Just going to zoom right out. That was my chart. That's my mind map right there. I wish I could kind of share these. I might sort of do like I might share the mind map. Anyway, if you guys are interested in the rest of the signings for Arsenal, if you've got any thoughts on this, get in there. Let me know what you think of each of these signings, and we'll chat it through down there in the comments. Yeah, I've really appreciated you guys watching most of the videos and interacting with them. I think there's some interesting points here that I'd love to hear your thoughts on, and I'll chat to you again real soon right here on the Laurence McKenna channel.